Everybody, welcome into another episode of the Windy City Breakdown. Tony Andracki here, joined by Andy Martínez and Kyle Millinowisch. And guys, it's kind of bleak times for the Cubs right now. We're recording this Monday afternoon. Cade Horton obviously got hurt over the weekend on Friday in Cleveland. Forearm injury, was almost immediately placed on the IL later in the weekend. Matthew Boyd also on the IL right now with a little bit of a bicep issue. So things not looking great from the starting pitching standpoint. We've talked a lot on this pod just about the depth that they've built up and how they can kind of wait things out until Justin Steele comes back. But we're immediately seeing that depth tested right now, right, Andy?
Yeah, it's so funny. We did talk about the depth, and we're like, well, we talked about Javier Sad starting the year in AAA, and he's coming up and taking Matthew Boyd's spot. And we're recording this on Monday, so you might be listening at Assad starting on Tuesday. He might have already pitched by the time you're listening, but it's so funny when you talk about all the depth, and then you're wondering like, oh, like Steele in June, and now you're wondering like, man, what's the soonest you can kind of get him back the way things are looking with the Cade Horton and the Matthew Boyd injury? Because really, like if you have another injury to the rotation, you're kind of thinking like Ben Brown's probably back in the rotation. I mean, think about like some of the depth
You'd love
options
that,
that
Andy.
are. Think about some of the depth options beyond that, right? Like Jordan Wicks is also hurt, so he's not an option. Like Jackson Wiggins has had one start in AAA. Like, are you gonna try and go to that route? There's some veterans that are in the minor leagues, Vince Velasquez, guys like that. Like, you really start questioning the depth about the starting pitching if another injury happens, and that's kind of where it's a little bit concerning with those two guys going down.
Yeah, Kyle, what do you make of this? And actually, real quick, Kyle, before I throw to you on that Matthew Boyd talked on Monday early afternoon, and he reminded me of you right away, Kyle, because he said with his biceps, he couldn't, or like the issue, he couldn't point his foot at a certain thing, which feels like the way like Kyle kind of messes up saying sometimes and like goes back and forth with some stuff. So like he didn't know exactly where or when the issue started, but instead of saying point your finger, he said he couldn't point a foot at like a specific moment.
What an idiot. So he pitched. When did he pitch last? Was it Wednesday against the Angels at Wrigley?
Yeah,
Yeah,
And he went
Wednesday.
what, like, five or essentially six scoreless. He might have whoever came in inherited a couple runs, but uh, yeah, I think it might be time. This is the meatball fan. Brown breaking out the panic button. I mean, again, the Cade Horton injury. Anything. I know it was forearm, but that's too close to the elbow for my comfort zone. And the Matthew Boyd thing, I mean, I mean, they have a history. They have an extensive injury history, right? Boyd have Tommy John in
yep.
22? He missed a chunk of
Yep.
23, obviously, or maybe it was 24, whatever. The Cade thing
He
is
came back
that's
in 24 and debuted against the Cubs. Sorry.
August 12th. Yeah, shout out me. Um, yeah, it scares me. I mean, I think the panic meter is higher on Cade than it is on Boyd, just because of the type of injury and then obviously the potential that Cade has. But either way, I mean, you guys hit the nail on the head. If you get
I
one
was
more
gonna
injury, it's like we're fucked.
I was gonna say the Cade thing. It reminded me a lot of the Justin Steele injury last year, and just the way the phrasing's been going about by the Cubs, or like the I would say like just like how it's being treated. Like the Justin Steele injury was like, oh, it's just a forearm. He had missed time in 24 with a forearm injury, and it was just the minimum stay, and that was kind of like what they were alluding to. And then, if you remember, he goes on. He has the season-ending surgery shortly after, and there was a line that Craig Counsell told reporters in Cleveland that I thought was interesting. When on Sunday before the doubleheader finale, where he talked about like, oh, he's going to get through all the evaluations and opinions, and then he like had a brief pause and then goes, as you always kind of do in these situations. And I'm like, if it's just a minimum stay, or if it's just like a slight concern, like it was being said, I don't think you need a ton of evaluations, right? Like that's where the alarm bells started going off for me of like, this might be more serious than they're maybe leading on to. And who knows? Again, maybe we'll get more word in a couple of days, and it is just a minimum stay. But like at least on the early initial reaction on what's being said, Cade Horton's going back to Chicago to get more imaging done. Like That's a little concerning.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is concerning. There's a little bit of like hopium like aspect of it started in his wrist and moved up to his forearm, whereas like you feel like if it's a serious elbow injury, it would. We've always heard it like kind of the other way around. The forearm is kind of the thing that is hurt first, not like a wrist issue. I will say good on Cade for like coming out right away when he felt something, not trying to like push through it. So if it does end up being a shorter stint, even if it's not the minimum 15 days, if it's only 3 weeks or something like that, like good on him for not pushing through and making something more severe. But like we said at the time of this recording right now, it might still end up being really severe. Like we don't know for sure exactly like how this is all going to play out, and maybe he does follow the path that Justice Steele has had, where both these guys have had Tommy John surgeries before, and Steele's obviously a little further along in his career than Cade Horton, but it's just another tough injury blow for Cade. I had the bold prediction before the season that I think he could finish in the top 3 in Cy Young voting. I mean, this seems like that's probably not going to happen right now, just because of this already. Here we are on April 6th talking about this. It seems like it's not going to be a full season no matter what. And now, best case scenario, he only misses 2 weeks. But like, it might be more realistic, like you said, Andy, when you're talking about seeing specialists and getting opinions and imaging and all of that done on your forearm. One of the scariest, maybe the scariest area, for a pitcher right away. Like, probably 3-4 weeks is what we're looking at in a best case scenario. So, and obviously worst cases, he's done for the year and he made a start and not even a half of another one. So definitely scary. And I mean, I think to your point, Kyle, about like panic level, I mean, I don't think the Boyd thing is as big of a panic level. That to me seems like maybe it crops up and it lingers a little bit, but like that could just be a minimum stay and you don't want to push things. With a guy who does have a long injury history, you just don't want to push things at this point in the year. But anytime you see a guy like Cade walk off the mound like that in the middle of, is it the second or third inning? I can't remember now. Second inning. Like walking off that early is just worrisome, especially when he's clearly the best pitcher on the roster too. So, yeah, I do think that there's a panic level around the starting rotation for sure. And I feel like about this, this team in general has not played up to its capabilities. Like they haven't won on back-to-back days. They're 4-5 entering this series in Tampa Bay. Like, I think it's still early and a lot can happen. And we talked about the starter depth. And I think when you pencil in Colin Ray and Javier Assad, like you still have, there's a pretty good options to fill, even if it's your 1 and 2 starters in Boyd and Cade Horton. But reasonable panic level. I mean, Kyle, if you were to put a number on it, what would you say 1 to 10 panic level for Cubs right now?
Realistic number, probably 6 to 7, probably 6.5. My internal panic level, probably 9. But yeah, probably 6 to 7. I think it makes sense.
What's the difference between like internal and like realistic panic level?
Probably being optimistic or pessimistic. Like I feel like if you have Colin Ray and Javier Assad making 25 to 30 starts each, that's not good. But if it's more like 10 to 15 maybe each, if that, then it's the panic level goes down significantly. But I mean, they're obviously not bad options, but at the same time, I think you would rather have Matthew Boyd and Cade Horton out there.
Yeah, Andy, what about you? What's your panic level? What do you think right now for Cubs or rotation or whatever in general?
I guess for the rotation, yeah, you're probably like at a 7 or 8. But like for the Cubs, and like it's so funny because like you guys always give me crap for being like the negative one. Like I'm honestly like a 4 or 5. Like some of those games were like weird games, right? Like the second Cleveland game. I understand like the second doubleheader game, in Cleveland that the Cubs lost. Like I understand like the Ben Brown situation, but like I also understand Craig Counsell of like Ben Brown covering these innings to save the bullpen at the back of a doubleheader with 3 games coming up in Tampa Bay. Like I understood that logic. So like you're not really like pushing the levers that you would normally push later in the season because you're trying to protect the roster health like overall. So like yeah, you'd probably want them to be, they're 4-5. You'd probably want them to be like 6-3 or 7-2 for sure. But like realistically, like you've had some crummy weather days. You've had 2 injuries to your rotation now. Like you're figuring out your bullpen pieces. Yep, you've been without Seiya Suzuki, and also they've run into some crappy luck. I saw the tweet and I looked up the double check the stats. Still, going into Monday's games, the Cubs are still second in hard hit percentage among all as a team among baseball. Like they're hitting the ball hard. They're squaring up balls. Alex Bregman kind of like that felt like the epitome of that first home series where he felt like he was hitting the ball hard every single time and it was finding a glove or it wasn't dropping. Like the offense is going to come around, which is what we kind of figured would be, the strength of this team if all goes well. You want that to you figure that's gonna turn and that's gonna start leading to some better results. But I understand some panic because it's early in the season. But I think if this was June and the Cubs were amidst a 4-5 stretch, the panic level might be in the 4 or 5 range compared to like the 6 or 7.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think it's the time of the year weighs heavily on this. I'm probably overall for this team at like a 3 or 4, and I think all of the 3 or 4 is solely contingent upon Cade Horton's health. If Horton just had a biceps injury the same way that Matthew Boyd did, and both were on the IL, I mean, I'd probably be at like a 0 or 1 panic level. I mean, I think that it's all contingent upon Cade Horton. But that being said, I think the panic level with this rotation is at a 9 right now. I mean, Edward Cabrera has not stayed healthy his whole career. Shota Imanaga has had issues staying healthy. Obviously, just in his brief MLB tenure, last year he had the hamstring injury that then affected him the rest of the year. But Jamison Tyone has been on the IL a couple of times. Like you're an injury away from one of those guys, or just limping off a mound, or slipping on wet grass, or something away from being like full blown panic mode. Going back to what you said earlier, Andy, of like who comes up next. I mean, you have Kyle Wright, you have Vince Velasquez in the minors, but neither guy has really pitched much in the majors over the last few years. So it's tough. It's not a great spot for them to be in right now. There's still a month and a half plus before Steele comes back. Like I think it's May 24th is the first day for him to come back. But yeah, overall, I mean, the offense will warm up as the weather warms up. They will get more consistent with better batted ball luck. And Seiya coming back is going to help things out too. I think that'll kind of raise the floor at the very least. So panic level overall, yeah, I don't think really that big. But I mean, this Cade Horton stuff, I think their season relies pretty heavily on him. And if he goes the Justin Steele route of last year, and this is the only 6 innings or whatever that he pitches this year, I think that's a really, really tough position for them to be in, and it's just something that's really tough for them to climb their way out of. But anything short of Cade Horton being done for the year, even if he misses 2-3 months, like I think they're still in good shape as the season moves along.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that's why you accumulate this kind of pitching depth for this certain situation. You hope it's tested in May, June, July, as opposed to April 6th, but that's the situation the Cubs are in.
So, Andy, you talked about Ben Brown's situation, the second game of the doubleheader on Sunday, Easter Sunday doubleheader in Cleveland. Cubs win game 1, 1-0, lose game 2, 6-5. Just take us through, Andy, that whole like Ben Brown situation. What I know, I saw Cubs fans irate on social media about Craig Counsell and the decisions he made, but like you already made my argument that I was going to make in this earlier, just about like how Counsell has to pull these levers, kind of relies on Ben Brown. But like Andy, just your thoughts on the bullpen moves that Counsell made, especially in game 2.
Yeah, like if you pitch in game 1 of a doubleheader, especially in April, you're down for game 2. Like you're not pitching in game 2 unless you go into like the 14th or 15th inning and you desperately need arms. So you're already
Bar, who threw 28 pitches to
right.
Milner and Palencia. Those 3 guys are down.
Right. So then you're looking at the highest leverage guy I think left in that bullpen was Phil Maton, which is like 4-3 game. Sure, you want to bring him in, but then you put him in there. You don't have a 8th, 9th inning guy, and I understand the situation of like, well, you don't get there without it, but it's also April, so you want to save him for the 9th inning. You want to save him for the 8th inning. Like you can afford to do that in April. And in the Ben Brown situation, if you're able to cover the 3 innings with Ben Brown in that situation, or multiple innings, then that leaves you with 3 fresh arms. If he doesn't use Jacob Webb, Hunter Harvey, and Phil Maton, That leaves you with three fresh arms to start Monday's opener in Tampa Bay, which then maybe you can give Palencia a rest, who's already had a pretty taxing start to the season with the WBC and everything. And give some of those other guys that pitched in game one a rest. Like, you put yourself in a position to kind of rest your bullpen where you're not taxing them in April, so that when you have to pitch them 4 times in 5 days, or three in a row, or two in a row, or something like that later in the season, they can do that because they haven't been gassed. That's why it's so important to have a Ben Brown or a Colin Ray in the bullpen early on in the season, because it can cover those multiple innings that you're not burning through your bullpen in April in trying to chase games, like has been in the case in the past with the Cubs.
Yeah, and I think it was a really difficult spot. To me, Ben Brown gets a lot of the heat, but I think like what his issues were was it not just like a Ben Brown. I think Sunday's game 2 was more of a Jacob Webb issue than Ben Brown, truthfully. Like, so Brown comes in, Cubs are still up 3-0. Then Ian Happ, gives the Cubs a 4-3 lead. Jacob Webb comes in, gives up 3 runs. They're suddenly losing 6-4. Like, to me, I think it's a Webb issue. And like Brown, had a little bit of an up and down first couple outings. Like, looked amazing outing 2 of the season. First outing was, a little bit hit or miss, gave up a homer, right? But the third outing, not great. Still, all told, he's had a pretty solid start to the season. Jacob Webb and Hunter Harvey have not been what the Cubs hoped they were going to get. Both have really struggled. Webb has a 7-something ERA, but his peripheral numbers are even worse than that. His expected ERA is like 12. And Hunter Harvey has struggled as well too. So like, where I get, you bring in Ben Brown, like Cubs fans are like crucifying Craig Counsell for this, but like I don't know where you go either. I mean, that's not the case for Riley Martin's MLB debut. That's not the spot for it. Ethan Roberts, your 27th man, you're not bringing him in there. Like you said, you could bring in Phil Maton, or you could bring in Jacob Webb, or you could bring in Hunter Harvey. Fine, but like Maton in the 6th inning of a game, like I don't know if that's the best time for it. You have to get so many more outs. Hunter Harvey and Jacob Webb, I would go to Ben Brown too over those guys. Like I have more trust in Ben Brown right now, even after Sunday's outing, than Harvey or Webb. Just the way they've looked, they've both been hit hard. It's been a difficult start for those two guys. They have some decent track records, so I think they can clearly iron out the creases here. But I feel like there's just not really a lot of like great moves for Counsell to pull, great buttons for Counsell to push there.
Yeah, that's like the difficulty with a doubleheader, is that like you're not managing it like a normal game, because you're either having the piggyback effects of game 1, or you're trying to plan ahead for game 2. You almost like split your bullpen in two, of like, all right, these 4 guys I'm going to use in game 1, and these 4 guys I'm going to use in game 2, and like, yeah, like you have to throw Jacob Webb and Hunter Harvey in situations to try and get them, like, they're not going to correct their mistakes or figure out their issues by sitting in the bullpen and not pitching, but like, you also want to protect these guys, and Ben Brown has to pitch these multiple innings and has to cover these multiple innings. And then when he runs into trouble, you have to have the hope that Webb and Harvey are going to come in and do so. And obviously, Jacob Webb didn't do it on Sunday night, Sunday afternoon. Like, that's where the issues stem from. I agree. Like, it isn't totally a Ben Brown decision. There's question marks about him for sure. Like, what is he? What are his roles? Like, what guy are you going to get on a given day when he comes out to pitch? But like, that Sundays wasn't totally on Ben Brown.
Kyle, what's your take on this? Like, how do you kind of armchair manage alongside Counsell as you watch games like this?
Yeah, no. What's funny is like I think people online manage like they're playing video games, where every game, every
Yeah.
guy has 100% stamina. Where it's like that's not real life. So, and I mean, I'm not gonna. Everything I would say is what Andy and you guys were both saying earlier, is like, if you pitch game 1, you're not going to pitch game 2, especially in April. But what really got me thinking was, you obviously get the extra guy, the 27th man, for a doubleheader. I'm curious what you guys think. Do you think it makes any sense, especially maybe even in April, to get 2 extra guys, like 2 extra pitchers for a doubleheader? Just because, I mean, there's so much. I don't even know what the phrase would be. There's so much caution with arm injuries and not overextending guys. Does it make sense to have 2 extra arms for doubleheaders? So, I mean, think the Cubs are now playing their 3rd game in essentially 28 hours here. Like, it's taxing for bullpen guys. So, like in this situation, I'll say just the first month of the year, like up until May 1st. Do you agree with that? Disagree with that? That's something I've been thinking about.
That'd be cool. I don't know how you have a different set of rules for a certain month. That being said, obviously you have expanded rosters in September, so
Yeah.
I think there's like something of a precedent for it, and we've never seen something at the beginning of the season. But I don't see why not. And honestly, along those lines, like I don't see why you can't have 27 guys in March and April to help pitcher injuries anyway, and that last guy's a pitcher, and then if you have a doubleheader in March or April, you get a 28th guy, and then it kind of
Hmm.
like what you're talking about, Kyle. Like I think that would actually make more
It's
sense to me almost than this September call up where they have right now. Of you get two extra guys, and it's just kind of a weird fit right now.
it's what they did after the COVID or after in 2021 and the 2022. Remember the first month of the season there was 28 men on the roster because of the
Oh
short
yeah,
spring training and all that. And it is interesting that in September, like theoretically, when you're like kind of at your peak or like built up, they add in two extra roster spots, and obviously it used to be 14 or 15 more extra roster spots or up to that amount. But like at the beginning of the season, when you're like kind of trying to get your feet under you, they're like, no, you're playing with the 26 guys. I mean, I think a lot of it goes down to like the CBA and like that creates more jobs, and do owners want to pay more for players? Like, we're already seeing the labor issues pop up now. Like, I think creating an extra rush spot even for March and April, probably the owners probably wouldn't like that a whole lot.
yeah. I think that it would be difficult to come to pass, but I do think it makes a lot of sense, and
I agree.
but also it invokes this strategy too, right? So like. I think one of the things that Council does really well, one of the reasons why he's paid $8 million a year, one of the highest paid managers in the game. I don't know if he still is the highest paid. I don't know all manager salaries, but like, the reason is because of how he handles his pitchers, but more so like how he views the big picture throughout every game of the season. He does that, I think, better than any other manager in the game. Now, admittedly, I haven't seen every other manager like manage on a daily basis, but that was his one of his calling cards in Milwaukee is like you don't use Josh Hader, Devin Williams, some of these top guys when the team is down. Like you save those guys, you don't burn them out, you don't tax your pitching staff in April. That's how you get to the point where it's like Craig Timber and Craig Tober, right? Like of September and October of like the Brewers were always hitting their stride and taking off was because he did what he could. Some things are out of your control, Cade Horton, Matthew Boyd injuries, but he did what he could to keep the big picture, the long view in mind. And I think that's exactly what he did yesterday on Sunday for the doubleheader. Is like, okay, we're not going to tax Palencia, we're not going to tax Thielbar and Milner, who also has looked really good. Like these are three really important guys. We got one win. We got that 1-0 win. We held on. Of course, it'd be great to win game two as well, especially when you're staked to a 3-0 lead. But like, is it really the end of the world if you lose that game? If it means that you lose a pitcher, if it means that you have a guy, have like a shoulder injury or something like that. Like we're seeing right now in Houston, one of the best pitchers in the game is Hunter Brown, and he threw 102 or something pitches on opening day. He was the most out of anybody in the league. Then the next time out, he rarely threw on like the regular 5-day routine last year. Then he comes out, throws on that like 5-day routine, was kind of banged up, or like I guess came out of it not feeling great, and now he's on the IL with a shoulder injury, and we don't know what the rest of his season is going to look like. So like, by the Astros pushing their young ace too far, too hard, too quickly, it may impact them the rest of the year, and that's what Council doesn't want to do. So it stinks, and I'm with you, Kyle. I feel like people manage a lot like it's video games, but I think people also manage a lot like they don't think about the big picture, and they don't think about 162. They think about like, I got to win this game right now. I want to win this game right now. And that's great. And I love that. I'm super competitive and I would want to do that too. But that's why what I think makes Council so great as a manager and why his players do love him and play well for him is because he thinks about all of that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, it really does like stink from the Cubs perspective that they blew that lead. But also like, again, you need if Jacob Webb pitches what he's supposed to and Hunter Harvey comes in after and then Maton, we're not even really talking about the Ben Brown thing that much. It's mostly I feel like because they lost that we talk about it, but But I do feel like the Webb and Harvey additions so far have just not panned out. Again, very, very small sample size, but like the Cubs need those guys to pitch meaningful innings this year, and they need them to kind of right the ship at the moment.
Do you think it takes Craig a little bit of time to figure out where guys' roles will be in the bullpen, like a month or two? And guys obviously getting accustomed to Craig's setup, so to say.
I definitely think so, and I think we saw that last year where it's like I think he goes in, and I think every team does this. I think he goes in where it's like these are probably my three leverage guys, and maybe this guy's my closer or my ninth inning guy. But I think he's very adaptable and like and gives guys opportunities, and I think this goes to kind of what Tony was saying. It's like he will try things, or he'll push guys. Maybe he'll push Ben Brown for an extra inning or situation to see how they do, because I think it's one of like the most important things when you're trying to develop a bullpen. It's like early on in the season, do you punt a game and lose a game to like push a guy in a leverage situation, or push a guy maybe an extra out batter or something like that? So A, for the learning experience, B, to save the other bullpen arms. And does that help you win two more games later on in the season because now he develops? Like I think back to Palencia last year where first save opportunity in Miami, he blows it, right? He had 2 strikes, 2 outs, he blows it. And like it would have been really easy to say, all right, like this guy can't do leverage situations. Like let's go back to Ryan Presley and I think Porter Hodge was still healthy at the time. Let's go back to those two guys, and Palencia can go back to low leverage or going back and forth between Iowa. But 2 days later, he went right back to him, and he picked up the save, and obviously took off from there. And now he's the everyday closer or the full time closer. It's, do you punt that one game in Miami because it gets you 22 more saves the rest of the year, or do you try and chase that one game in Miami and then you don't maybe you don't get Palencia? Like that's the ultimate conundrum, and that's what Craig Counsell does so well, as you mentioned, Tony.
Yeah, and I do think that I think it takes all managers, Kyle, like time to build the bullpen kind of the way you want it. I think bullpens around baseball are on shaky ground all of March and April. I think like unless you have an entirely veteran laden group, but even then, guys get off to slow starts or are kind of banged up. Like relievers are so volatile, maybe a little less volatile nowadays than we've seen in even the like somewhat recent past. But like there's still guys that kind of come out of nowhere and have incredible seasons. Brad Keller, for example, last year, or even Drew Pomeranz. But like it'll take some time, I think, for everybody to kind of get right. And you also figure like the bullpen's probably not firing on all cylinders at the beginning of a season, anyways, because when you have 8 guys down there, the chance of all 8 guys pitching at the top of their game right to start out the season when maybe you're physically not even in your prime, like we talked about in August or September being a lot different than March or April. So yeah, I do think that that's all a factor here too. But I do want to talk about one guy specifically in the bullpen is Riley Martin. We didn't see him in the doubleheader at all, but he comes up, Andy, and you have a tie to him just based off of the Quincy tie in Illinois. Andy, tell us a little bit about Riley Martin, what Cubs fans can expect, and just his journey to the majors and how kind of cool this story has been.
Yeah, we overlapped in college for like a year, so it was my last year, and it was his freshman year. And the baseball program at Quincy's always been really, really good at the D2 level. They reached the College World Series, I think it was 2017 or 2018. So like there was a standard of high success at the Division II level. The former coach, now the athletic director, Josh Raby, played for the Twins for a couple years in the 2000s, and he kind of ran the program like a high level college program with like how they trained and the expectations, and he picked up a lot of fringe D1 guys that kind of developed the program. And with Riley Martin, he was a guy who was a really good D2 college pitcher, which there's a lot of really good D2, D3 college pitchers that like that's kind of like their max, right? Like they're just gonna hit that peak. And so his senior year was the 2020 season, and he was under the impression that like, all right, I'm gonna pitch 2020, and then I'm gonna go to pharmacy school. Like I'm hitting 88, 89 miles an hour on a fastball. I'm not going to get drafted, but I'm going to try and reach the College World Series and have a good season. And then obviously the pandemic happened. Season gets cut short, so he gets the extra this season. So he calls SIU Edwardsville, and he's like, hey, I'm going to defer my acceptance to pharmacy school. Like, I want to pitch one more year. I don't want my college or my baseball career to come to an end like this. So he worked out. He lifted a lot. He had built a gym in his home, and lifted, and suddenly he was throwing 94, 95, and was using a four seam as opposed to a sinker. He was striking out everyone. Like he set the school record for season strikeouts, wins, all of that, and that led to being a senior signed draft pick. So he signed for $1,000, right? Like nothing out of the draft. And teams usually do that with senior guys because they know it's like either you sign for these $1,000 or you're not going pro. So he did that, and then he went through the minor league grind and was at AAA for parts of 4 seasons. Then finally got the call up on Saturday and was in the big leagues. So like that was really, really cool to see his journey, where it's like this is a guy who literally was going to pharmacy school, had his mind set on wearing a white coat and filling out prescriptions, and now he's wearing white pinstripes and the Chicago Cubs uniform, which is just an awesome journey.
Yeah, it is for sure, and I mean, I think it's always kind of cool to see those guys get their shot, and I don't know how long he'll be up here. I think it's a little bit unique too, right? As like another lefty when you have Theo Bar and Hobie Milner and stuff. But Andy, what can what can Cubs fans expect from him, and what role do you think he might play in this ball?
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly going to be low leverage to start, and I think it's going to be a multi-inning relief role. Like that's kind of what he was doing throughout his minor league career, where he's kind of been pitching longer relief situations. But Craig Counsell mentioned this in Cleveland. Like they have a lot of lefties. Tampa Bay does, and Cleveland did. So you want another lefty in the bullpen for that reason, and he can cover length. Truthfully, like we mentioned, like if you're in a situation where either you're up big or you're down big, maybe he can come in and cover 2 or 3 innings. And when he does still strike out a lot of guys. Like he I think it was 80 strikeouts over 64 innings last season at AAA or something like that. Like it was insane strikeouts to innings pitched ratio. But there are still questions about the walk. Like he had a lot of walks. He's lowered them each year in the minor leagues, but the walks are still heavy there. So that'll be one thing to watch, is like he might be able to strike out a lot of guys, but will he be doing it with traffic from the walks? But either way, a cool story for like, that's why you watch sports, right? You watch the underdog story. You watch these guys that weren't supposed to be doing what they're doing it at the biggest level.
And one of the guys that Riley Martin was just playing with down in minors in AAA, Kevin Alcantara, he's tearing it up in AAA to start the year. Lower average, only 220 range, but 7 hits so far this season, 6 of which have gone for extra bases, 4 homers, 8 RBI, 2 doubles in there, slugging 700 with a 1.024 OPS through the first 8 games. This is, again, we're recording before he plays on at all this week after Sunday's action. Kyle, I'll throw you first. Is it time to call up Kevin Alcantara and take into account, like, where would he play, considering Seiya is coming back later this week too?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm looking at his baseball reference page here. It's so crazy to think he's only 23 years old. I feel like he's been with the Cubs for a decade.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he came in the Rizzo trade, which is crazy to think about too.
Yeah, I mean, so he's literally been in the organization. This will be his 6th different season with the Cubs. So yeah, I mean, he's just so young. It's crazy to me. No, don't bring him up. I mean, I think if you're going to bring him up, you have to play him every day. You're not going to bring him up to sit on the bench, right? Like, why the fuck would you do that?
Yeah.
I mean, as much as I love the power, I mean, he's still hitting 233, which isn't the best. But just take all that out. If you're bringing him up, you're playing him every day. And not to say he shouldn't be up, but I'm just saying they're not going to bring him up because he probably won't play every day. So my definitive answer is no. Andy, what say you?
I wonder if there's like a buyer's remorse or like a second guessing themselves of like, should they have been up on opening day, right? And been playing right field every day. I mean, obviously you wouldn't have known, and there's no guarantee that he would have been having the success at the major league level. It's a big jump from AAA to the majors, but like he was one of the final cuts again this year, like he was last year for the opening day roster. Like, would they have been better off in right field defensively and offensively? Who knows, right? And you're right, Kyle. Like the time to bring him up is probably past, just because he's not going to be playing every day, and as hot as he is, if he's playing once every 5th day, like he's not going to continue that success. So you just want him playing every day in case like an injury happens to PCA or Ian Happ or say Suzuki or Ballesteros, where maybe the path to everyday at bats increases.
Yeah, I think he would be playing every day over Matt Shaw, and that's tough to do when you feel like Shaw's earned it, right? And the Cubs clearly do. I don't have an opinion one way or another whether Shaw did or didn't earn an opportunity to play right field pretty much every day as he has in Seiya's absence, but I think the Cubs feel like Shaw has. You know, that he went out and played a bunch of different positions this spring after playing really well at third base. I mean, they've jerked him around a little bit, right? Like they've moved him all over different positions and turned him into a super utility guy. And this was their top prospect, or at least in their top two or three consensus, you know, just a year ago at this time. So to kind of do that with Shaw and then, you know, be like, hey, go to the outfield because Seiya's hurt, and okay, play there in Wrigley Field with the wind and the sun possibly creeping in, and just, you know, some difficult and a difficult like environment. I think he's done a really nice job with that too, like handling all of that. So, and yeah, I don't think there's any guarantee that Alcantara would come up and be slugging 700 with 4 homers and 8 RBI in the first 8 or 9 MLB games of the year. I do think that like big picture wise, this is huge, and like I think Cubs fans should really root for Alcantara even to have the success even at the AAA level, because next year we've talked about this just on the last couple podcasts about who the Cubs should extend. You have Seiya Suzuki, you have Ian Happ, both in their last year of their deals. Alcantara very well could be the Cubs starting left fielder or right fielder next year. He's out of options after this year, right, Andy? Like this was his
Yep.
last
Yes.
option year. So the Cubs have a decision to make after this year anyways. Like they have to carry him on the 26 man or risk losing him from the organization, or they have to trade him, or that, you know, they give him like an everyday spot. And to your point initially, Kyle, like if you're going to include him on the 26-man roster next year in his age 24 season, you're going to want to play him every day. Like this is still one of the top prospects in baseball, a top 100 guy, one of the top in the organization. So I think it's just huge to like for the Cubs organizationally to see a really big year out of Alcantara, who like has not really put it all together. Like we've talked about this before, and he's like tantalized his potential, but like I don't think he's really had like that big breakout statistical season where you're like, oh yeah, this dude had a year like PCA did a couple years ago, or even like Matt Shaw has done in the minors, right? Where like, yeah, I feel really good about this guy. Look at the numbers, you know, imagine, you know, kind of dream on how that would be at the big league level. So I just think that like the Cubs would be in a really good spot if Alcantara goes out and has a great year, even if it doesn't come in the big leagues in any level, because it might help solidify a spot next year in one of the corner outfield spots.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like if he plays up to his potential, and then you don't worry about losing one of Hap or both, or maybe both Suzuki. Like that's ultimately what you want. And again, like I've mentioned it on this podcast. I've spoken to you guys about it. Like the other thing that's tantalizing about him, besides the hot start he's having with his bat, is his defense is really really good.
Yep.
Like if you put him with PCA and an outfield, and you couple that with all the infield success defensively that you have, like you're talking about a really really elite defensive team. And if you decide you want to throw say Suzuki in left field, or if you bring back Ian Happ, Gold Glover in left field, now you're really just talking about a really really good defensive team where your pitching staff is gonna love playing in front of those guys.
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, I agree though with you guys. It's not time to call him up right now, but I think really cool that he's off to such a hot start down there. Definitely will bear watching throughout the rest of this season, or at least the rest of this month, depending on how injuries play out for the position player group. But that'll do it for this edition of the Windy City Breakdown. Stay tuned later in the week. We're going to have a 2-podcast week. We have a guest joining the show for Thursday's Cubs off day. So stay tuned there. Check us out wherever you get podcasts, on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, or in video form on YouTube. Thanks as always for tuning in and checking us out.